Great. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Accountability Lab's quarterly learning and impact call for quarter 3, 2017. Time flies. And this is a very interesting call today about the Open Government Partnership in Pakistan. We are honored to have two illustrious guests with us, Natalia Tariq from Open Society Foundation Pakistan, and Ali Mohsin from the Economic Affairs Division at the Government of Pakistan and the Ministry of Finance, both of whom have been working very closely on the Open Government Partnership in Pakistan. My colleague Fayaz from Accountability Lab sadly can't make it, so I'm stepping in to help run the call. And these calls are something we do on a quarterly basis to help reflect on what's happening in certain areas of our work, to share challenges, to share ideas, to try and understand what lessons can be learned more broadly in a variety of ways for openness, for accountability, and for integrity. This is an interesting time for the Open Government Partnership in Pakistan. As many of you may know, Pakistan joined the Open Government Partnership last December at the OGP Summit in Paris. That required endorsing the Open Government Declaration, and since then the country has been working on its first National Action Plan, which is a document that brings together a whole series of commitments in conjunction with civil society around issues related to open government, transparency, anti-corruption, citizen participation, and so on. There's been consultations all over the country. There's been a draft plan that's been shared with civil society. There's been a high-level visit from the OGP support unit in DC to work with the government on all of this. And we're now reaching the point where the plan should be approved by Cabinet relatively soon to then be put into implementation over the course of the next two years. So lots that's been done, but lots more to do. And so what we wanted to do today is hear from a couple of different perspectives what the process has been like, what the challenges and successes have been, and where we go from here. So I'd like to hand over firstly to Natalia, who's with OSF in Pakistan. OSF has played a really important role in convening people in Pakistan around the OGP, in helping people understand what it means and what the process involves, and in supporting this effort to try and help get people involved in governance and open government in Pakistan. So Natalia, handing over to you, would you like to maybe give us a few thoughts from your perspective on how it's worked in Pakistan, what the challenges and what the successes have been?
Sure. Thank you, Blair. So just very quickly, I'd like to introduce myself and the organization I'm associated with. So I work for the Open Society Foundation's office in Pakistan, where I'm managing the transparency and accountability portfolio. Our foundation is essentially a grant-making organization. We work very closely with local civil society organizations in Pakistan on various issues, which include access to information. We do community social auditing. We work on issues of fiscal transparency, which as part of our broader transparency and accountability portfolio. The Open Government Partnership has been something of interest, to us, both for the foundations at a global level, as well as in Pakistan. And so our association with the partnership and trying to get Pakistan to join as a member actually predates the December 2016 summit, where Pakistan officially signed on. So our Minister of Finance, Mr. Dar, signed on to become an official member of the Open Government Partnership then. But even before that, in 2014, when the Asia Pacific Summit was happening in Indonesia, we had our Minister of Planning, Mr. Yasin Iqbal, also attend the summit. And so, the interest in the partnership goes way back. And even before that, there has been sort of civil society interest as well as from the private sector in trying to get the government of Pakistan to join. So there was a very sort of small working group that we had of about 10 organizations, a few from the private sector, mostly from the NGO sector, that were sort of interested in having Pakistan sign up. Then in 2016, officially, as Pakistan has now become a member, there have been a series of activities which have followed. There have been consultations, those that have been hosted by the government. So the EAD itself has hosted several consultations, both at the federal level as well as at the subnational level. So there have been consultations in each of the provinces hosted by the government, and also several consultations, including the larger sort of steering committee national workshop, which happened that Blair just mentioned in July. Apart from that, there have also been convenings at the civil society level, where Open Society Foundation has been just one of the organizations. I think Accountability Lab has held several of these consultations, and we have also held many of these consultations in collaboration with the lab and some other civil society partners that we have here. And the idea behind these consultations was essentially to bring more and more civil society organizations as well as people from the private sector on board so that they understand exactly what the partnership is, to understand the partnership model and how they can actually contribute to the National Action Plan making process, how their input would be very valuable to the development of the commitments that the government of Pakistan makes under this National Action Plan. So I think I will quickly move on to talk a little bit about where we stand right now, and what I think have been some of the successes, but more importantly, what I see as possibly being some of the challenges that were faced, and I think areas that we really need to work on as we move forward, because October 30th is the deadline for Pakistan to submit its first National Action Plan, the draft of it, and it's really going to be crucial that as the implementation phase begins, because with all the other OGP countries as well, I think once the draft National Action Plan is made, it's when the implementation starts that I think it's really most of the battle is from there on. So I think that it's going to be very important for me to share what I think are some of the issues that definitely need to be worked on better as we move forward. So I think that for starters, in terms of what the civil, because I come from sort of more of a civil society perspective, I'd like to share that I think that the mobilization from the civil society side, at least in Pakistan, I think it could have been structured a lot better. I think that there has been a lot of interest from civil society groups, but I don't necessarily think that there was a lot of active coalition building around the open government partnership. And I think it's when it comes to something like this, it really helps if there's sort of a unified voice and a lot more collaboration between civil society organizations. So I think that a little bit of what has happened is that civil society organizations have operated in silos. So there were thematic areas that were identified under which the commitments would be made, which I think is obviously very important. So there needs to be, very focused attention on these thematic commitments. But at the same time, I think that there is a lot of opportunity for cross-collaboration and cross-learning, because all of these different teams within the Open Government Partnership are very connected. So I think that making those connections as we go forward is very, very important. I think another thing that needs to happen is that even as we move forward in this process, it's very important for the government of Pakistan to look at the civil society as equal partners in this process. So, for example, OSF has, done similar work in other countries. So in Sri Lanka, for example, we supported a civil society coalition in doing outreach and awareness raising on OGP across the entire country, but also in developing a monitoring mechanism for tracking the progress on the commitments. So I think even in Pakistan, it's very important for this collaboration to continue even after the National Action Plan is made and the implementation phase begins. The platform for the collaboration information is actually going to be provided by the multi-stakeholder forum. Currently the way I see it, the multi-stakeholder forum in Pakistan, it's at the very nascent stages. I think currently there's only a short-term interim multi-stakeholder forum that's been formed just to finalize the National Action Plan. But I think that the process for this multi-stakeholder forum needs to be incredibly inclusive and very transparent, and I think that it needs to be truly representative of all voices from civil society, from government, and from private sector in the country. The partnership really needs to be genuine, and for that to happen, I think that the government of Pakistan needs to be really, really responsive to the suggestions that are being put forth by the civil society when it comes to the commitments as well as their implementation processes. So I think that's incredibly important. I'll come to the commitments and where I see those stand right now in a little bit. I also think it's very important for us to think about moving forward. What is the governance structure for OGP going to look like once the implementation phase begins? I think that it's very important that there is coordination across all the relevant government agencies, because there are several different government agencies, both at the federal level, but also at the sub-national level, because we do have country commitments coming in from the provinces as well. So it's very important that these are all very well coordinated. So there needs to be some sort of a structure or a body or some sort of a committee that needs to be formed that can officially sort of coordinate all these activities. I also think it's very important for the OGP commitments to be aligned with the country's other planning processes. We have sustainable development goals. For example, in Pakistan, the government of Pakistan is aiming towards achieving many of these SDGs. Similarly, we have our own internal sort of development plans, and I think that the OGP should not be separate from these. I think it's very important for these to be integrated within this, and we have to engage all senior government officials who have decision-making authority in this process. Otherwise, I think it kind of loses its importance. And especially when it comes to the implementation phase, I think that having this kind of political will across party lines is going to be very important. So I think engaging with champions that within government who we think could take this cause forward, I think that is a process that needs to start as well. Moving on to the commitments very quickly, I think that there have been several commitments that have been received under each of these 8 thematic areas. I'm going to let Ali Mohsin probably talk in greater detail about these commitments, but just very quickly, I think that the quality of the commitments vary. So I think, for example, the Ministry of Climate Change has submitted some pretty strong commitments, whereas I don't necessarily see some of the other commitments being as strong. The issue, I think, is to do with the specificity in some of the commitments. So, for example, the fiscal transparency commitment talks about publishing of documents, but it doesn't specify which documents are going to be published under the commitment. Or there are several commitments to do with women's empowerment, but it doesn't necessarily relate to the open government partnership. So I think the second issue is for the commitments to be a lot more relevant. A very quick example is that one of the commitments talks about the Women's Economic Empowerment Index being published. But I think it's very important to link this to the overall objective of the Open Government Partnership and try to show what purpose this index will serve in the openness and transparency agenda for the country as a whole. So I think my 5 minutes are up, so I'll end here, and I think maybe we can go into more detail in the question and answer session.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Natalia. Really, really good and succinct point there. Let's move straight on to Ali, who's with the Economic Affairs Division at the Ministry of Finance in Pakistan, and one of the key government counterparts on OGP throughout this process. Ali, would you like to explain briefly how you see the process has evolved and maybe touch on some of the issues that Natalia mentioned?
Okay. Thank you, Blair and Jane, and all participants who are listening me. Natalia as well. And first of all, I want to say thanks to Natalia Tariq for detailed introductions about OGP and other things which are relevant to the OGP initiatives. I want to mention that why Pakistan joined Open Government Partnership. Actually, the purpose was that it was of own interest, and the government joined OGP due to its goal and principles were in line with the commitment of the government of Pakistan to transparency, accountability, openness, and good governance. Pakistan has fulfilled the eligibility criteria for participation in the OGP, and it's strongly committed to objective as set of the OGP declaration. So, as a cabinet, we sought approval from cabinet, and as a lead ministry, we are dealing with this matter, and we identified 8 thematic areas, and then identified 8 lead ministries for dealing with the other line ministries and provinces as well. Our strategy was in order to formulate a national action plan. After signing the letter of intent to join OGP in December 2016, Economic Affairs Division, Government of Pakistan, launched an awareness campaign regarding OGP, and the future action plans were shared with all stakeholders, including federal governments, provincial governments, civil society organizations, private sectors, and Minister for Finance held the first consultation meeting on OGP in Islamabad on 30th November 2016 with a representative from different civil society and GOP stakeholders. Actually, and then we conducted another consultation meeting with the whole representative of civil society, development partners, and government sectors. And unfortunately, the participation from government side was not so good. On 21st February 2017, then we have EAD some initiatives, and we identified 8 lead ministries and gave them command to conduct meetings with their line departments. And before that, we conducted some briefing at EAD level. Our senior management conducted these consultations. We discussed in detail about the thematic areas and their role and responsibilities, and we also conducted, with the support of Provincial Planning and Development Department, provincial level organizations, and about OGP consultations where OSF, Accountability Lab, and particularly mentioned that they supported us for the conducting of these consultations. And by the grace of Almighty Allah, we have covered all the provinces of Pakistan so far. And in June, we conducted some follow-up meetings with our lead and line ministries, and a representative from active civil society were also attended these meetings, and they gave their suggestions, and with mutual consultations, they prepared a draft national action plan. Initially, we committed 8 thematic areas, commitment on 8 thematic areas, and later we also joined as a 9th thematic area on climate change, and they have initiated the commitment also. And despite this, one of our lead ministry, which is Establishment Division, they didn't submit their draft. They couldn't submit their commitment, and so far we couldn't receive their commitment. And as Natalia mentioned that we have received draft commitments. We shared with OGP Secretariat and received their valuable feedback, and then we shared with the stakeholders, and they revised their commitments, and then again they submit to EAD. And for the finalization of these commitments or National Action Plan, we established an interim basis a multi-stakeholder forum. Actually, due to shortage of time, we only picked 6 civil society organizations among 16 to 20 organizations which were actively participated during the process of NAP. We picked only our high management picked 6 civil society organizations and 15 representatives from government side, from lead and provinces as well. So forum was established and first meeting was conducted on 12th October of this month, and this forum with majority approved the National Action Plan. They discussed in detail, and there were some of our fellows from civil societies. They recorded their amendments, like Natalia mentioned about fiscal transparency, and even our chair, additional secretary, advised the concerned ministry to incorporate these things. And we are trying our best due to close deadline as we have, and we are making our National Action Plan so good and so productive. And the best thing is I have seen in my professional career, the good thing is that we established a close collaboration with the civil society organization, and it is my personal strong will that the role of civil society is very important. And we, as a desk officer, I will try my best to establish the things, and after the approval of NAP and all processes. And so our NAP, our first draft of NAP is almost arrived, and we will share for the consent of our finance minister and for the approval of cabinet division. After approval, then it will be another crucial phase, which is an implementation phase. And luckily, the good thing is that we have received 8 commitments on 8 thematic areas out of 9 thematic areas. Only from establishment divisions we couldn't. And our 6 provinces, Punjab, Sindh, KP, and Balochistan, AJK, and Kyrgyz Pakistan have submitted their commitments. So we have lot of commitments, and I will give it.
Ali, I think I can't hear you too well now. Are you still there?
You can't hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Yes, yeah, but let's if it's okay with you, maybe we could bring it to an end and just open up for a few questions because we're running out of time. But that was an excellent summary.
Okay.
And touched on some of the points that Natalia mentioned, which is great. Jean, is there anyone over there in the room or on the line who has any questions? Maybe we can fit a couple of quick ones in now.
Yes. So I have one question for Natalia, which is, from a learning perspective, what have been the biggest successes that you have experienced from the sort of OGP negotiation process, but also going through this whole engaging with civil society and government, etc. And then for Ali, I've got, how are the members of the multi-stakeholder forum selected, and how will that process evolve going forward?
Great. So Natalia, maybe over to you first.
Okay, so should I respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I think that in terms of learning and success, I would say that in a very, very short span of time, because actually the first, official consultation that was held after the signing of, signing on to the Open Government Partnership by the government was in February. I think it was towards the end of February. And so from there to now, the stage that we have come to, where the National Action Plan is actually being finalized, where more or less, all the different aspects of transparency and accountability, are being looked at under this National Action Plan, including issues of justice, including fiscal issues, including, the use of the digital space and how that connects to issues of openness and transparency. I think that we've really come a long way. I think that in a country which is as large and as diverse as Pakistan, just bringing people together on one table to discuss this, I think that's a feat in itself. I think that there is, it's just how enormous the country is in terms of its geography, but also I think that there's such a diversity in the civil society, which is a great thing. But at the same time, I think sometimes bringing people together on the same table, it's not very easy, and I think we've been able to accomplish that. There are always going to be things that we could have done better. So as I mentioned, of course, I think that perhaps the effort could have been a little more well coordinated. But I think given the time constraints, and I think Ali has mentioned that as well, that both parties, I think the government and the non-governmental actors, that to come up with this in such a short span of time, I think that has really been a feat, and I think it's really something that I must acknowledge and appreciate. I think that the second thing is also that all of the involvement of civil society actors, has been completely voluntary so far. I know that there are people who have driven long distances just to be a part of these consultations, resources, a lot of civil society organizations, activists do not have too many resources, but I think people have prioritized this because I think as a country, as citizens of this country, we think that the Open Government Partnership is an opportunity. I think that we really appreciate and congratulate the government for having signed on to this, and I think taking this, as a very serious commitment. So I think that these have all been some of the successes, and I think that there's a long way to go, but I think that, we really must pat ourselves on our backs for also having come to this point.
Brilliant, Natalia. Thank you. And we're talking of time constraints. We're running out of time here, but the last word from you, Ali, on the question about the MSF and how organizations are being chosen for that and how it's going to function going forwards.
Hello, thanks, Blair. Actually, I mentioned that it was a very new initiative for us, and we took this initiative of OGP as an emergency basis, and we launched very good consultations. And what I need to give reply to our fellow, this is that how multi-stakeholder forum was established and what was the process. Actually, it was a very short period of time and our deadline was very close. So at this stage, that's why we created an interim multi-stakeholder forum. We picked only because when OGPT delegation visited Pakistan, and first it decided that, and it was the instructions of OGP visitors like Jack and Sharia, and they told that we need to establish a 20-member multi-stakeholder forum, then have approval from the secretary, and decided by our management that at this stage we need to pick those civil society organizations who performed active role, and due to shortage of time, that's why we make analysis of their for example, their credentials, and one of thing here I want to mention that, which is very important nowadays for Pakistan, due to our policies, like as you know that we have a very strong policy like INGO and NGO registration policy in Pakistan. So we tried to catch those organizations who were registered with some organization or EAD, and number one. And the second thing was the role of civil society. For example, those organizations who have performed a very strong role during the consultations, they conducted some consultations and they supported EAD in any form of, for example, technical support to conduct these meetings with the representative government at provincial and federal level. So it was our criteria. We established an interim multi-stakeholder forum. And the other side, we picked representatives from lead ministries and provinces as well. And it is an interim forum. And as we submit our National Action Plan to OGP Secretariat by 31st October of this year, then we will establish a permanent forum as OGP guided us, and we will try to pick more representatives from civil society organizations, and from here at equal level we will try because co-creation process and equality will be very good at national level, and we will welcome to more representations from civil society organization in the multi-stakeholder forum. And it is my belief that then we can establish and then we can implement our National Action Plan in better way. Hello?
Great.
I think it will be enough for me.
No, that's great, Ali. I'm afraid we're running out of time, but that all made a lot of sense. Thank you. And we appreciate your insights on all of this. Clearly, lots of progress, but some more to be done on the Open Government Partnership in Pakistan. A critical time now, with the end of October coming up, the plan needing to be approved by Cabinet, and then, as Natalia pointed out, the arrangements for the implementation of that plan to be worked out and put in place in a way that can hopefully address some of the challenges that we've discussed. We need to wrap this up because we really try and keep this to half an hour. But thank you, Ali, Mohsin from EAD. Thank you, Natalia from OSF. Really, really interesting. And we will post this recording on our website and disseminate to various other people who are interested in these sorts of things over the next few days. And look forward to working with you both in Pakistan to help OGP become everything it can be over the next months and years. So thank you. Thanks to Jean for coordinating. And thanks to everyone for listening. Sorry we didn't have more time for questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Blair. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Thank you, Jean. Thank you.